You're listening to LSU Daily with Matt Musso, your home for all things LSU sports.
Off and running here on another edition of LSU Daily. Welcome in and glad to have you along for the ride. We have a jam-packed show to get to today. Plenty with LSU football. The final On 300 rankings from On 3 came out for the class of 2025. LSU found themselves with a new five-star signee and one of the biggest risers in the country as well in their 2025 class. We'll tell you all about that. Senior Bowl practices have wrapped up over in Mobile. Which LSU guys stood out? They had plenty of them over there for the game, as well as in the East-West Shrine Bowl. That ball game actually took place on Thursday, so you had three LSU Tigers over in that game. So kind of give you a roundup of the postseason draft bowl games, if you want to call them that, here on today's show as well. And then Kim Mulkey's squad got win number 22 on the season, and it was a huge night for the big three of Michaela Williams, Flau'jae Johnson, and Anissa Morrow. Tell you a little bit about that win, top 15 win for the Tigers over Oklahoma. So smash the like, subscribe. If you have not already, please subscribe, share, follow me on social media, of course on Twitter X at Musso Matthew. You can find me on Instagram as well at Matthew Musso1 on Facebook. All those places, would love to connect, and it's greatly appreciated. Let's go ahead and dive right in. We will start actually with something that I didn't kind of tease there right off the open, and that is another staff addition at LSU. This one's an interesting one because it kind of deals with football, at least somebody who's been in the football department in the past with LSU, but now maybe a different role, just kind of in the athletic department as a whole. You might have saw this late on, or I should say early Thursday evening. LSU is bringing back Keava Soil-Cormier in what Matt Zenitz of 247 reports in a name, image, and likeness role within the athletic department. So kind of not just football, but in the athletic department. Soil-Cormier, this will be her second stint at LSU. She was with the LSU football program for 7 seasons, serving in multiple different roles, including assistant director of recruiting operations, special events with football. And one of those years happened to be 2019 as well. Obviously, when LSU, the greatest team in history, and went to the national championship game and won it 15-0 season. We all know, we all revere it. The last 3 years she spent at Baylor, which obviously makes a lot of sense. Dave Aranda, part of that 2019 staff at LSU, saw her work, gets that coaching job at Baylor, takes her with her. But now, after the 3 years at Baylor, she is back. We will see kind of what this role develops into. Obviously, Brian Kelly's had a lot of shakeup on his staff and his personnel staff, not the on-field assistants, but just personnel support staff in that regard. Obviously, a lot of people probably saw Jazz Smith no longer in her position with the football program, which, was kind of football ops and, special events for the football team and whatnot. That's a role that Soil-Cormier, has experience in, but again, Matt Zenitz says this is going to be a name, image, and likeness role within the athletic department, which, look, there's going to be a lot of changes coming to that with revenue share being, ushered in and going into effect in the summer. I believe that's going to be in June or July, and that's going to change things with NIL. It's going to change things with collectives. It's going to change things all up again in college football. We all used to joke and make fun of the ever-changing landscape of college athletics. Well, here we go. Get ready. It's changing again. And there's going to be a lot of different roles for people, and we will see how this ultimately develops. But back at LSU is Keava Soil-Cormier, and back home in Louisiana as well. She's a Lafayette native. So we'll obviously keep you posted on what that role ultimately ends up being. To the On 300. I was sitting at home last night on Thursday night, and I thought to myself, I said, it's January 30th. Man, you know what's wild? The traditional signing day is next week on Wednesday, which is absurd to think about because that game, I'm guessing most people listening to this right now just went, Oh, yeah, there's a traditional signing day. Because remember everything, all the hoopla and events that used to be surrounded the first Wednesday in February, National Signing Day, and the early signing period has just neutered all of that. Like LSU, the hay is in the barn. The class is set to go. I mean, since they wrapped up a top 10 class in the early signing period, all their energies have been spent on the transfer portal. So it's going to be a very uneventful day for LSU next Wednesday. But it's like, man, because I'm looking through the on 300 and everything. I'm like, gosh, the traditional signing day, which still exists, is next week. And it just goes so largely unnoticed. It's not on anybody's radar here because of the work LSU did. Just a wild thing to think about. But with that on 300, LSU ends up with 3 5-stars, which, we had thought that would end up happening. And it's interesting because there was just so much fluctuation with LSU in the 5-stars that they had committed this year at 1.4. They finished the class with 2. Now with the latest on 300, they end up with 3. The third is Carius Curne, the big interior offensive lineman out of Arkansas, now a 5-star, up to number 28 overall in the nation per on 3. Just an absolute freak show. A guy who was committed to Arkansas initially, but once Brad Davis and LSU got involved, they were able to flip that commitment, and he stayed loyal and in the boat the entire time. And this is a guy that, this was long kind of thought. I know Shea Dixon of On 3 mentioned this plenty of times, that Carius Curne was probably going to end up a 5-star when they got down to the final 32 5-stars in the final rankings. And lo and behold, he did. And it's just a guy who has continued to climb rankings all throughout his high school. 6'4", 320 pounds, 33.5-inch arms. This is a guy. Look, I'm gonna throw this out there again. 6'4", 320 pounds. He ran a 4.840 through in camps when he was going through his cycle. He can do backflips, front flips. He's an insane athlete at that size. He actually had early offers as a defensive lineman. So that's the type of athlete you're getting here with Carius Curne as well. And Brian Kelly on signing day made no bones about the early potential of now 5-star LSU signee Carius Curne.
Physically imposing, 6'4", 330 pounds, one of the stronger offensive linemen that I've recruited in some time. He is physically strong at the point of attack. He dominates his opponents. If you just turn on his film, he absolutely dominates his opponent. He is physically ready to play in the SEC right now. We'll have to see how the other things come together, but he is physically ready to play. He's a special player.
Physically ready to play in the SEC right now. And while sometimes that sounds so wild because we know how much the SEC is a trenches league and you got to come in and develop a little bit. I'll remind you, Will Campbell, day one starter. That was a 5-star, one of the top offensive linemen in the country, just like Curne. Emory Jones, same thing, started as a freshman. Not game one, day one, but it was, like week 3? There's that Mississippi State game. He ended up getting a lot of run in, and then he didn't leave the starting lineup for the rest of his career at LSU. There are 2 guys at tackle starting for you at freshman. Curne's an interior offensive lineman who play more guard, and this is certainly possible. The head coach just told you he's ready to do it. You just have to see if everything comes together through spring, through fall camp, through summer, all of those things. But when you look at LSU's offensive line, and we talked about this plenty when we were talking transfer portal, there is an opportunity. There is an opportunity for these young guys, these freshmen, to come in and play early. And Carius Curne is, especially at guard, and Carius Curne is probably the leader of that pack. Look, you're going to put Braylon Moore at center. You haven't gotten a offensive tackle out of the portal. You still have the spring window, and we'll see if they go address that. But one thing you did get is Josh Thompson, the lineman from Northwestern who can play guard or tackle. So depending on where you put him, for the sake of this argument, let's say you put him at right tackle or left tackle. Okay, we have to fill the other spot. Tyree Adams or Weston Davis, and Weston Davis was a 5-star. It figures one of those guys could slide in there, young guy who they like, and then you look at the guard spots, and you have two of them open. And DJ Chester could absolutely kick down to one of those. Paul Mubenga played plenty of guard for you down the stretch because of the injury to Garrett Dellinger. But then you also have 5-star Carius Curne, 5-star Solomon Thomas, all those guys, those two young freshmen that could slide right in. So, I mean, there's an opportunity for Curne immediately at LSU upon his arrival. So, I mean, that's for a guy that's that big of a freak. Brian Kelly right there on signing day said 330. I'm looking here. Charles Power from On 3 has him listed at 6'4", 320. But a 4'8", 40. Backflips. Cartwheels. The guy's an absolute freak. So it's going to be fascinating to watch Carius Curne develop here as LSU hits the field for spring, summer, and then obviously fall, and then tee it up and kick it off against Clemson on on August 30th, and see if he's out there, man, getting a start at one of those guard positions, day one, game one for LSU. The other big mover for LSU. So in the final on 300, they always release, the guys who made the biggest jump. And LSU had a player, and it was TaRon Francis, wide receiver out of Edna Karr. And this was a huge, huge jump. Going into this final ranking, TaRon Francis sat at 212th overall in the country, which is very good. After this final ranking, On 3 has him the 89th best player in America overall. Number 13 wide receiver, and pop-up ads, y'all. They're horrible. And number 4 player overall in the state of Louisiana. 6'1", 200 pounds, had a monster season to finish out his career at Carr. I mean, the guy's nickname's Manchild. It's one of those Louisiana wide receivers where they grow on trees. You go to any high school, especially in the New Orleans area, Acadiana, hell, even look, Kenny Darby up at Airline. Pick them out, man. Skill position players, freak athletes on the outside. They are a dime a dozen in Louisiana, and they continue all to get better, and TaRon Francis is the latest. That's a guy who, look, I know you look at LSU's wide receiver room, and it's stacked again for 2025. I mean, you brought in Barian Brown, you brought in Nick Anderson out of the transfer portal. Obviously, Aaron Anderson returns. Xavier Thomas returns. Chris Hilton returns. It might not be an immediate impact for TaRon Francis, but judging by that jump, judging by the measurable, the size, everything about him, the high school program he's coming from, he looks like he could potentially be the next in line in the greats of LSU wide receivers. And that's not even, considering what else you have in this class, and Phillip Wright out of Destrehan. I mean, LSU, they did it again there in high school recruiting in the state of Louisiana. It came to the skill positions and specifically wide receivers. And then your other two 5 stars, I mean, no real change, no real move. DJ Pickett remains a 5-star and the number 1 cornerback in the country, number 10 overall player in the nation. And then Harlem Berry, also as well, top 20 player, number 18, maintains his 5 stars. So that gives LSU 3 in the final on 300, 3 5 stars for the class of 2025. No change in the class ranking for LSU. They are still ranked 8th nationally for 2025. Okay, Senior Bowl roundup quickly. It was a really, really good week, especially for Mason Taylor and Emory Jones. Emory Jones really went out there and showed capability at both guard and tackle. Everybody expects him to kick down to guard at the next level. Had a great battle with Texas A&M's Shamar Stewart. Also had a fantastic battle with Baron Sorrell from Texas. That one's all over social media if you want to go take a look at that. So Emory Jones really acquitted himself nicely in those Senior Bowl practices, in the one-on-ones. I mean, he didn't win every rep, but that's going to happen. And right after that, normally you saw him immediately bounce back on the next one. That's what I'm saying. Like, go find the battle between him. It was a 3-part battle between him and Baron Sorrell from Texas, and again from Shamar Stewart on Texas A&M. A lot of them were the same. He was able to, withstand bull rush. I mean, Emory Jones had a great week of practice. Now we'll get a look at him in the game on Saturday and see how that goes. And then, I mean, Mason Taylor just constantly won and caught the ball everywhere. I think what they really want to see going forward is the blocking, and it looked like he did really well in that, just from all accounts that you saw coming out of the Senior Bowl. But the one-on-ones and the pass catching were really, really, really on display for Mason Taylor. And then, it was interesting. Garrett Dellinger repped a lot at center here. You'll remember he, in Brian Kelly's first year, he started that game against Florida State, the first game of the season at center, and it didn't go great, and they switched him. But he also had mentioned in his media availability that he'd been repping backup center at LSU for the last few years. So he's been playing a lot, and he repped it at Senior Bowl, and all accounts are he looked pretty good there. And then Miles Frazier. Miles Frazier along the offensive line, LSU really stood out. Frazier really showed versatility to play tackle. And look, you saw that in the bowl game for LSU, and now he showed it at the Senior Bowl again. So he might be actually the biggest winner for LSU the last few days because he showed that ability at tackle. And that's just more versatility, and obviously tackles get paid, y'all, in the NFL. So for him to have the week he's had, that could be huge. Senior Bowl is tomorrow, February 1st. You can see it on the NFL Network if you're not going to be in Mobile. Kickoff, 1 o'clock for that game. All right, last but certainly not least, LSU women's hoops. Kim Mulkey's club, they improved to 22-1 on the season. Of course, the one is the loss to South Carolina a week ago up in Columbia. But the number 7 Tigers held off a furious rally from Oklahoma, one that they kind of contributed to with some of their mistakes. But in the end, it was a 107-100 win for LSU. It was the first time in SEC history for women's basketball that both teams surpassed 100 points in regulation. It is the most points LSU has scored in their program history in an SEC game, and only the 4th game in program history where both teams have scored 100 points. The other 3 all went to overtime. LSU was in firm control of this game for the majority. They had a 10-point lead at half. They led by as many as 24 in the third quarter, ultimately took a 15-point lead into the fourth quarter, and that's where things kind of went awry. LSU started turning the ball over against Oklahoma's press, and the Sooners were able to mount a full comeback and get it to within 1 with 55 seconds remaining. At that point, Michaela Williams knocked down a huge three-pointer. That was after LSU grabbed 2 offensive rebounds. That three-pointer, part of 37 points on the night for Michaela Williams. On the other end, there was a block and a turnover by Oklahoma on the ensuing possession. Flau'jae Johnson scooped up the loose ball and laid it in for the dagger, 107-100 for LSU. That layup for Flau'jae, part of a 25-point night for her. And then, oh, by the way, Anissa Morrow added 21 points, 12 rebounds, so another double-double. The big 3 for LSU, Williams, Johnson, Morrow, they've been fantastic all season long. It got scrappy in this game. You saw Samaya Smith get ejected. It was an intense battle. And look, would you have loved to seen LSU be able to just keep the foot on the pedal and cruise to the win, especially when you're up 24 in the third quarter? Of course. But Oklahoma's a top 15 team as well in the country, and they weren't going to go down completely without a fight. And again, LSU, you turned it over 19 times in the game, a lot of those late against that press, and you allowed them back in the game. But what they showed was, again, that ability to close out tight games and to win down the stretch and to not be denied. And that is something that's just going to continue to serve this team well as they go forth into March. Like, LSU's going to be there. So when they get there, it's about how deep of a run they can make. And winning these close games down the stretch, overcoming the adversity, that's only going to serve them extremely well when they do get to March and try to make a run at the program's second national championship. All right, that's going to wrap it up here today on LSU Daily. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, all those things greatly appreciated. Follow me on social media as well, and be here next time for more on LSU Daily.